Hello friends and welcome to my channel if you're new, or welcome back if you are back. If you are new, hi, my name's Rabbit and my pronouns are they, them. And oh my god, I feel like I haven't filmed in like 200 years. It's been like 4 months and basically 4 weeks, sorry, can't even think right now. It's been about 4 weeks since I uploaded when I'm filming this, and the reason I was gone for so long is because I was sewing and creating a bunch of Halloween vests and just like having a ton of fun creating stuff and just like making and fiddling with like little pieces of felt and different things. And I have like Cajun Eyes matching vests like ready to go for the season, and I basically just wanted to do a video where I show you guys what I made. I didn't really film the process of making these, but I might make a video eventually about how to make felt patches. I took some pictures along the way, so I'll insert those. But I have 4 vests here and I just wanted to like kind of talk about the process of making them a little bit, like my inspirations and all of that kind of thing. I'll show like every patch so you can get like an idea of like creative little things that you can do and add to like jazz up your own creations if you want to make something similar like this. And I'll obviously link some other creators that I was inspired by below. But yeah, basically I got a bunch of Halloween vests made. I'm so ready for the season. I'm so ready to wear 3 of these. One of them is for Cage, but the other 3 are just for me. And it was just so fun to experiment and get creative. Basically, like the reason that I wanted to do this project was I was looking at like pictures of those like vintage ugly Christmas sweaters, and I was like, a Halloween version of that would be really fun. And I looked it up and it's like totally a thing. So I like got a bunch of screenshot inspiration, and at first I like wanted to make the vests from scratch. Which I did do that with 2 of them, and that was like kind of tricky. Those were like the first 2, and then for the last 2 I just used vests that I got from the thrift store. That was like way easier. So yeah, let's talk about everything and go over them and get to show off things. So this is vest number 1 that was created. I will insert like little clips beside me here of me wearing them and stuff. And it's kind of sad. I like wish I took a picture of like every single patch before I put it together, because some of them got like cut up in the process. For this project, I was very much inspired by the Stitches. They did this video recently where they made this like giant quilted jacket, and I thought it would be like super cool. But just to simplify it down a little bit, I decided to make a vest instead because it just like seemed a little easier, and I hadn't really done something like this before. And also I didn't have a pattern, so I just kind of winged, you know what I mean. I winged this one, and that was probably not for the best. For my second one I used a pattern and it was so much easier, and I was like, wow, why don't I do this more often? But regardless, basically for this one, what I did as my first step was I made a list of all the little like elements that I wanted, like a witch hat and like a broom and like a black cat and like all these kinds of things, and I wrote it down. And then I drew out all the designs that I wanted, and if I wasn't confident in drawing them, I like looked up something online and like printed a picture so I could like use that as a stencil. So once I had all my drawings done, I took pieces of fleece and cut out my drawings and then used them to make stencils and like laid those all out. So I had a bunch of them, and what did I end up doing? I think I did 4, by 3 squares on the back and 2 by 3 on the front. And all of these were probably like 5 inches by 6 inches or something, because I wanted to do like a little bit of a rectangular shape. And I wanted to like add a bunch of like different little elements, because one of my favorite things about like those like really corny like 80s Christmas sweaters is like all the pom-poms and glitter and sequins, and I just like think it's like a really fun element. So I decided to add a lot of that, but I also added detail with like embroidery and metallic thread and beads and stuff like that, and even handmade buttons that I made out of clay. So basically, without further ado, let's just go over each patch that I made. First one that we're going to talk about is this little haunted house. So it's just like a black piece of fleece with the little yellow squares as like windows and doors, and then I added some embroidery to make like the doorknobs and the, you know, window frames and stuff like that. And I added some little sequin bats that I got at the dollar store flying out of there. And then this patch next to it was a moon and stars, but I cut off most of it for the sleeve and added some sequins there. But then this one is really fun. It's like a beaded coffin, a black piece of fleece with a piece of ribbon as like the cross, and then I used a bunch of tiny beads and again used some of those little bat sequins. Then the candy corn patch is super fun, just pieces of white, orange, and yellow fleece with these beads that are just plastic beads that I think I got at the thrift store, but they're just little stars, and I used white, orange, and yellow ones, and I think it looks super cute. And then this pumpkin patch is very Joanna Parker inspired. I think she's like one of my favorite Halloween artists. I love the like really cutesy vintage Halloween style. So I did that kind of like little mischievous face. And for the hat, I put like a little pom-pom on there, and I used a bunch of metallic thread, and I think it looks really, really cute. Plus a bunch of sequins, obviously. And I did machine sew all of the patches together, but then I added some really big chunky stitches with embroidery thread to make everything pop more, and I feel like it really just like elevated the piece a lot. And then this one is like kind of a pumpkin patch, and I used some yarn to make like the stems of the pumpkins because I wanted it to be kind of like viney and interesting. And it's very fuzzy, so that's kind of fun. Moving on to the back, I have a little white ghost that I added some beading around, and I think it looks really, really cute, just like all different beads that I got at the thrift store. And then this bat patch, I'm not super in love with it, but it works. It's just like some black bats. And I added like some star embroidery. And then this one was a raven on a moon on like a spooky branch tree, but I had to cut off most of it. But the raven is beaded, so that's kind of fun. This one is just like a witch's broom with some sparkly sequins around it. I had gotten like a pack of orange sequins years ago back when I was in university at the dollar store. I'd been holding on to them forever, and I like never knew what I would end up using them for, and finally I've used up like most of them in making these vests, which is super fun. And then I've got like a little witch's hat, which I think is super fun. I used a lot of metallic thread in this one, and I love like three-dimensional elements, so I added like a little bow just made out of a piece of ribbon to the witch hat as the decorative bow. And then here I have some bones, and for these ones I used some fake pearls on a string and just like sewed them around the edges. And then I have like kind of a black cat in the Halloween cat pose with some sequins around it, and I just added like some embroidery stitches to give it a little extra dimension. And then I embroidered this little thing that says trick or treat and put these little orange beads above and below it. And I have to say, with this one I used like a piece of felt behind the fabric because all of the fabric that I used for these patches is just like this really stretchy knit, and it was so freaking hard to embroider it with nothing behind it. So like this was my first attempt at doing trick or treat, and it just like it's fine, but it was really hard to get like any sort of tension because this fabric is just like stretchy knit fabric. So with the second one that I did, I put a piece of felt behind it and then embroidered as I wanted to, and it worked out great. Same thing with the spider web. This was it before I added the felt reinforcements, and this is it with the felt reinforcements. So you can see like it's a big difference, and I highly recommend adding some felt if you want like a cleaner look. If you like the kind of messier, more handmade look, then go for that and don't add the felt and you're all good. Go for it. Next I did a little green cauldron, and I thought this one was super fun. I added a bunch of different sized beads to make it look all like bubbly and stuff, and I wanted to do this more with this project, but I couldn't find that many patches that kind of warranted it. But I did add like a little necklace charm. It's just like a little spider to the cauldron, and I wanted to add more like little charms throughout it, but I couldn't really think of spots where they would make sense. But now I'm thinking like maybe I could add one like to the broom handle, or like maybe over the coffin. Like I don't know, we'll figure something out. But I really like the idea of having like little danglies like this thing, and again I used metallic thread to make it look kind of interesting. And then I wanted a little cemetery scene, so I did this one. It's got a spooky tree and some little like star sequins that are from the thrift store. And then I made some little graves with some embroidery on them to be like a little cross and a little rest in peace. And then this one is just 2 pieces of ribbon that I sewed together. And then below that I have a little skull, and he's pretty cute, but I updated my skull design in the future projects and I like the other ones better. And again, with some sparkles around. And then this patch was a spider, but again, alas, we had to cut it, sacrifice it for the vest shape. How sad. And this one is like a bunch of falling leaves, and I really like doing like one color of felt with a different color of embroidery. I think it really adds to like the autumnal vibe. And then I really like this crystal ball patch. I think it looks really, really pretty with all the metallic threads. A little like rays around it are like pretty subtle, but I think they look really nice. And then I showed this briefly, but my spider web, this one was the one I did add like another little spider charm to, and then a bunch of little star sequins behind it. And then this is a really classic black cat design. I think I'll put a picture of it here, but it was all over Michael's Halloween stuff like a couple years ago, and I've always really liked this design, so I recreated it for mine and Cage's vests, and I think it looks really, really cute. I added some little kind of fake pearls as the eyes, so it's like extra shiny, and I did all the whiskers and stuff with embroidery, and I think it looks really cute. And then this candle I'm quite proud of. I did like little embroidery waxy beads that are supposed to look like they're melting, and originally it had more like gold metallic thread raised, but they're starting to come undone, so you know, it is what it is. This was first attempt, and I think it looks pretty good for like not using a pattern and just kind of winging it and trying my best. I also made these candy corn buttons out of clay. Thank you so much to the people who recommended I do that when I talked in one of my recent videos about wanting to make candy corn jewelry. I was talking about like maybe using real candy corns in like resin. Someone was saying that like, why don't you just use clay? And I was like, duh. So yeah, amazing idea. Candy corn buttons, I think they really, really add to it. And they are actually just decorative buttons because I didn't want to fiddle with the whole thing, so it doesn't actually like button up properly. It's just supposed to be an open vest, but I still think it looks really nice. I used a lining, which is crazy. I'm usually never this professional with my projects, but I was super inspired by the Stitches who like showed how to do like a lining and like whatever in their video, so amazing. Thank you so much. I love it. And then I even used bias tape to line everything around, which again, we are moving up in production. Like I've been sewing since I was 12, but never in a professional manner. Like I never use like bias tape and like I'm always just kind of like cutting things up and stitching them together and being like, good enough, like hopefully it works. And usually that's been fine, but I've been really, really enjoying challenging myself and trying to like make things nicer. And this is by no means a professional vest, by no means, but it's really cute and handmade, and the goal was to look like a cute handmade like 80s vintage vest that like a teacher might wear, like an art teacher might wear in like middle school for Halloween. Like that was the goal, and I think we have definitely achieved it. I remember last year when I had my like curly red hair and like my curly bangs, I would sometimes get comments about looking like a goth Miss Frizzle, and I feel like this, if I had that hair last year, would just like amp up the vibe so much more. So I'm really excited to get to wear these more in the season. So far I've worn this one out to my friend's Halloween party, or like birthday slash summer Halloween party, and it was super fun. But yeah, that was that one. This next one I wore out one time when I went Halloween hunting with Cage, and that was super, super fun. So this is this one. Ooh, so fancy. This one's like extra fancy because I used a pattern. I found this pattern at the thrift store for $2. And it's for this vest, but it also included like pants and a bunch of other stuff, but I just wanted it for the vest pattern. And why haven't I been using patterns like all my life? I've just been like, I've just been like using t-shirts that I already had and like basing patterns off like clothes I already had. It is so much easier to use a professional pattern. Why was I not doing that before? I was like losing my mind, kicking myself when I did this, and it took a day instead of a freaking week of like cutting and recutting and fiddling with this thing. So check out your local thrift store for patterns is what I'm saying basically to all future people who might be struggling like me. So this vest, how I made it was I have a bunch of Halloween fabrics because I collect it every year. Whenever I find it, I just have been like hoarding little scraps of it in my fabric stash. I wanted to use a bunch of it up. Some of it is even just like stuff like this, which is like an old towel. Some of it is like from Spoonflower, like this Joanna Parker stuff. Some of it is like pieces of spiderweb mesh that are just like teeny tiny scraps that I plastered over like a gray t-shirt or like stuff like that. But yeah, basically it's all my collected Halloween fabrics. So what I did for this project was I got everything together that I wanted to use and ironed it all out, and then I cut a little square that I think was 5 inches by 5 inches. Maybe. I cut that out of paper and then used that as like a pattern to trace all my squares for this. Then I arranged everything on the floor, and I had a row of, I want to say 2 by 5 squares for the front, it looks like, and probably 5 by 5 on the back or something like that. I'll consult the pictures and like put them up here. But basically once I had all the squares laid out in the pattern that I wanted for the front and the back, I was able to just like sew everything together. And at first I really wanted to do the thing like the Stitches did, where like every single square was modified in some way with like some little pattern or some little fold or like some, because I just like thought that idea was so cool. But since so much of my fabric was already patterned and I didn't want to like obscure the patterns too much, I decided to just leave it as is, except for the kind of plain ones. So for this plain one, for instance, which was just a piece of black fabric, I added a ribbon with some like pumpkins on it and just like sewed it down the center, so it was able to be like now a black and orange kind of like half and half patch. This is just like a piece of orange t-shirt that I layered a piece of like black cat on a moon mesh over. Same with this piece, which is a gray t-shirt with like a piece of felt layered over it. So I was able to kind of like add a little bit of dimensional layers. This piece is from an old vest that I had in like high school or something that didn't fit me anymore. This orange and black polka dot situation is from a tea towel that was just way too thin to use as like a proper towel. This piece is from Cage's mom's quilts that she gave me like the scraps of years ago. So I just have like all different pieces of it. This jack-o'-lantern situation here is from a pair of Halloween scrubs that I found at the thrift store back when I was in high school. This is like thrifted fabric from the Christian thrift store, and I'm obsessed with this little black cat. I think it has the cutest little mischievous face, and I really, really like this fabric with the burnt orange and the stars in this kind of like very 80s vintagey design. So yeah, I was able to just like use up so many different things and put it all together. It feels fun to have a project like this because I can like look at all the different squares and scraps and be like, oh, this is from this is from that, and it's like all different little memories sewn together. I love patch projects like this, and I have a lot of Halloween scraps, so I'm hoping to make lots more interesting things out of the scraps like this thing. Basically, once I had all my pieces arranged, I could sew them all together, so I had like big squares of fabric, and then I just layered my pattern over top of it and cut it out and put it together. And then I had some thrifted black fabric that I just used to make the lining, and again we made the lining so cool. And then for the buttons, I made these little pumpkins out of clay. And last year I had made a Halloween jacket and I'd also made clay pumpkins, but these ones are like new and improved. They have vines and everything, and I didn't do like really the stem, but I did do some vines and I think they look really interesting. Again, I didn't cut any buttonholes because it's fine, it'll just like stay open. It's like kind of too big for me to button up anyway, even though I used like the smallest setting that the pattern had. It's all good. I'm super happy with it, and I feel like a vintage little baggy Halloween vest is fantastic, and I feel like this again gives like the very spooky vintage 80s Halloween vest, though I feel like this one looks much more professional and less like handmade than this one. Like they obviously both look handmade, but this one is like much more obvious, where this one looks like a little bit more profesh. So it was just interesting to experiment with things, though I will say this one took me like a day to make, where this one took me like a week to make. Okay, and then basically when I had told Cage that I was doing this project and showed him pictures of like my vest inspiration and stuff, he was like, that is so cool, can I have one too? And I was like, are you joking me? I would love to be matchy with you. So my third vest that I made was this one for Cage. And I think it is so cute. I'll have to like insert some pictures of him wearing it. And how this one worked is I went to the thrift store and I found this wool vest. This was a sweater vest from Banana Republic, which is like a fancy designer brand, and it's 100% wool, so it's like very nice quality, and I think it was like they wanted $9 for it or something, and I was like, perfect, that is an excellent deal. I tried it on Cage and it was like nice and baggy, and he wanted like something like nice and cozy that he could like layer over bigger shirts and stuff, so this was perfect. And for this one I used a combination of handmade felt patches and just squares of Halloween fabric that I had. So basically we went through my fabric scrap stash together and went through everything that he wanted on there, and then for the rest I just had creative liberty to make whatever felt patches I want. I was like, do you have any requests? And he's like, go crazy, and I was like, perfect. So this was the end result, so we'll go through everything on it. This one here, it's one of those autumn leaf patches, and I had a lot of fun trying out different stitches and designs for all the embroidery. I tried to use all different colors and techniques, so like this one's zigzag, this one's like slanted to the left, this one's slanted to the right, this one's X's. So each square I tried to like mix it up a little bit. This is from his mom, from her quilt stash. This is another one of those spooky cats. This is from a pair of Halloween scrubs. Then we've got a moon that I added some gold embroidery floss to, as well as like some shiny star sequins that I found at the thrift store. I got 3 big candy corns with like some really chunky embroidery floss. And this kind of Joanna Parker inspired pumpkin, though he's like not a direct tracing. This was just kind of my sketch of it, whereas the other one I traced out the pattern from like a dish, I think. This red piece is just an old t-shirt. This is a piece of fabric that I got at the thrift store. This ghosty I think is super fun. I added all these beads around, but I used all the same beads, so it's like much more subtle and professional looking. And then I used mostly stars around the border to make it all nice and sparkly. With the skull I used 2 different types of beads. So like the little round one and then the long one, so it gives still like a uniform look but a little more interesting. And then I used all different types of white sequins around them, so like the silver bats and like the little stars and like the little circles, so you can see the difference between like kind of the more uniform subtle spooky versus like the more fun and funky spooky. Then I have a little piece of dish towel. And then this bat was super fun. I did black and white beading all around it, and it was I was like a little bit worried that it would be too ambitious, but I honestly had a lot of fun just sitting down with him and watching Angel and beading all my little patches and projects. And then this fabric I talked about, I love it so much. It's so cute, and yeah, I just found it at one of my local MCC thrift stores. And then I wanted to go a little more intense with the cauldron on this one, so I added some flames at the bottom and some stuff dripping out, and it was just like a little bit of an experiment. I do think it's quite interesting, and I added like sequins and beads and all the bubbles going all wild. And then this little square I found at the thrift store was like pre-cut in squares for like someone's quilting project. And then I have a little haunted house with the bat sequins flying out. So that's the front. And then on the back, ooh, I love this fabric so much. I found it at the thrift store, and it's like this awesome Halloween scene with all the cats and the pumpkins and the spooky fence. It's so, so cute. And then this little pumpkin patch scene that is from Fabricland. It's like this fabric that has all different like squares, so it looks like patchy, and it's kind of like a country themed, but I really like this one with the 2 crows on it. And then Cage's mom's fabric again. And then I want to do a back patch. So this was my first attempt at that, and I think it looks really, really cool. So I've got like a starry sky with a spooky tree and a fence. The fence is just made out of yarn. And I have this little blue beaded raven on it. I don't know if it really reads as a raven, but I tried. And then I put a pumpkin patch underneath the tree and a little cemetery scene, and I think it looks really, really nice. And then this orange fabric was from this shirt that I got for free in university. That like front patch is now a back patch on something, and I've been using the fabric up in little Halloween projects ever since. And then this is a really cute one that's a Joanna Parker patch that says "Boo Scared Ya," and I love it. I think it's so, so, so fun. And then below that I have this spider that I made out of fleece and added some sparkles to and some chunky embroidery to. And then this is from a pair of Halloween scrubs. Lots of times I'll find like really cool Halloween scrubs and they just make the best fabric. This one looks almost like hand painted. It's so, so fun. It's got like a little haunted house and like a cat and a ghost and a witch and all sorts of interesting things. And then this piece of fabric was from the same square as this. Just from Fabricland. And I love this little scaredy cat set, which was from the same set as this. So, so, so cute. And then I have this little Joanna Parker pumpkin. This is Glow Away, and I love it. I think it's adorable. And I did another scaredy cat, but I really like this one. I gave it little like pearl eyes and all these sequins around it. I think it looks really, really fun. This little piece of plaid I found at the thrift store. This yellow piece of fabric was a leftover scrap from this project. And the candy corn I got from the dollar store, and I'm almost out of this fabric, and I really hope they have it at the dollar store again this year because I really, really like it. It's really simple but so cute. So that's a Cage's sweater, and I think it looks absolutely fabulous, and I'm so excited to go like matchy-matchy with him like in the sunflower field or to a haunted house, or like I don't know where we're gonna be matchy-matchy, hopefully everywhere, but it's gonna be so cute, and I'm just like really, really excited. And then last of all, this is my sweater that I made from a thrift store one, and it's to be matchy-matchy with Cage with like the back patch and everything. So for this one, I found a vest at the thrift store for $6.99, and it had all these roses on it, and I felt really bad, but like it was the only one that I could find that would really like work with the project. So I went ahead and like cut off all the roses, and I'll put a picture of before and like after the roses were cut off, and then once the patches were made, and then once the patches were on, and then once the patches were actually stitched on, because it's all very fun and interesting and different. But yeah, this was the final kind of iteration of everything. So I've got my falling leaves, a scaredy cat, again Joanna Parker inspired, but this one I drew myself and is just like inspired off a different design. This is an actual Joanna Parker piece of fabric that I got from Spoonflower. This little candy corn piece that I made out of fleece. The pumpkin patch with the ravens, I love that patch. I made another scaredy cat, and this one I added like little white beaded eyes, so he's kind of like looking like this way, and I think it's like very, very fun. Plus I added these spiderweb confetti pieces, candy corn piece. Then I have a beaded ghost that I added all sorts of different little beads to and a bunch of sequins. Another kind of Joanna Parker inspired pumpkin, and that's the left side. Then on the right, I've got more Joanna Parker fabric, those Halloween scrubs, this little skull that I think this design is really, really fun, and this little bat, which I added some beading to, and it says boo with the beads. And it also has like little black sequins on it. I have a little piece of plaid, again from the thrift store, and on the front I used leftover candy corn buttons that I had, because I still have like a couple left over from when I made them out of clay. Then on the back I have a moon with some beading and some sequins, a jack-o'-lantern, this is like a kind of classic jack-o'-lantern look with the sequins, and one of those fabulous pieces of fence kind of fabric. For my back patch, I made a spooky house, but still used like the blue fabric so it would look quite matchy, and I gave it like a little ghost friend coming out of it, and some little beaded bats flying around the yard, and like the spooky tree and the pumpkin patch, and a fence, so like it could almost look like this is just a little bit to the left of like Cage's patch, because it's still like kind of the same colors and stuff. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, but with Cage's back patch, I used yarn at the bottom to make the grass look all fun and interesting and textured, but for this one I just used a plain piece of green felt. Then I have a little Joanna Parker Sit for a Spell Witch, and another little purple witch hat with some metallic thread and that little bow because I just thought it looked really, really cute the first time. Then I have another Joanna Parker piece of fabric. I love her designs, I cannot get enough, and I think it just like fits really well with like the vintage vibe I'm kind of going for. Then I have this beaded coffin, because again, I just like that design a lot. Another crystal ball, tried and true, how could you go wrong? This amazing, I love it, so cute, this vintagey fabric. Like this feels so like 80s Halloween, like it's perfect. And then last but not least, another little bubbling cauldron, again with all the different bubbles coming out of different colors, and this little spider charm and the metallics. I omitted the fire this time. But yeah, I'll insert little pictures of me wearing all of them. I'll insert pictures of me and Cage wearing them together. They were such a blast to make. I'm sorry that I didn't like film more of the actual creation of them, but I've been meaning to make a tutorial on how to make felt patches for a while now. And if you're interested, watch that, and basically, you know, you can figure it out from there, like vest, sew on patches. Or like if you already know how to make patches and things, you know, use a pattern and go for it. Like, these are super, super fun. I had such an interesting time. If you're going for like kind of a quicker project, I would recommend just picking up a vest from the thrift store and attaching pre-printed Halloween fabric. If you don't know how to sew, you can always use fabric glue. Just make sure you iron down all the edges first so you don't fray. But honestly, I found it was just like such a delightful little way to kick off the Halloween season. I was kind of upset that it took me so long. Normally I'm really fast with my projects and the turnaround time is pretty quick, but since I wanted to try so many different techniques, it literally took me 4 weeks, and I'm like, holy, like this is this is too much, like anyway. But I also had like a busy time because my cousin came to visit me from Italy, and Cajun and I, we have a wedding coming up, not our wedding, but friends, like there's a bunch of stuff going on, and I really want to make so much Halloween content, but I'm like so stressed because I'm like, it's only 2 months and I have so many things I want to do. So yes, wish me luck. I have so many things I want to get out soon, and I hope to do all of them, and I hope to get to bring you along for the ride for all of it. Yes, amazing. So happy I got to do some Halloween crafting. Happy beginning of the spooky season, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Thanks again for watching, and give yourself a big hug for me. Bye!